name's Kevin Carr. I run a division of a company where one of the things we do is 3D printing and 3D scanning, so that's going to give you some high level on that. There we go. Well, and it's interesting, from our perspective, you guys are young. I don't like the fact I'm getting older and all you guys are young, but most of the world has lived in a 2D space. From a design perspective, the way we've built buildings and things, it's really been living in that 2D space. But the exciting thing that's exploded over the last 8 years is this 3D technology. So that's why we're passionate about 3D scanning and 3D printing and how it really is affecting the market and improving efficiencies. If you look at manufacturing, traditional manufacturing has been doing 3D for the last 20 years. But now it's finally getting into the building world. And now you're seeing it being integrated into documentation. You're seeing it, integrated into the way that you're actually managing buildings after they're built. So it's important for you guys, as you learn, to bring this technology into the work field. Because honestly, some of the older ones like me, it's hard to change. And I always laugh, we got into 3D printing about 7 years ago. My first printer placement was from a student that had gone to USC. He had learned 3D printing technology at school and brought it to Shure microphone. It was the first time they had a 3D printer, and it was a kid who was 23 years old that brought it. So kudos to you guys for coming out and learning this. But one of the things, all these technologies everyone's talking about is disruptive. And what does that mean? It means it's creating new businesses, new ways of doing work. And so that's why it's important for you to embrace that, because the companies that leverage it, the companies that are up here and being developed, are the ones that are going to be the leaders in the market. So it's important for them to do that. So scanning, I don't know if I can go back. Scanning is interesting because I was just talking back. 3D printing technology has not changed much in 10 years. The properties have gotten better. The materials are better. But 3D scanning is a little different because the hardware has changed so much. If you look at it, we started with traditional tripod scanners that use laser, that can scan this room and can scan buildings. But now we have handheld scanners. And why is it so critical? Because those tripod scanners to scan piping in very complex areas is very difficult. So now we have handheld scanners with very high tolerance where you can go in and capture existing conditions. You have it now being built into your iPads or some adjustments to it. Andrew's going to talk about drone scanning. One of the biggest impacts to the industry is how you can scan those large areas. So it's interesting because the hardware is changing, and there's so many ways to capture that data. And that's kind of, where's that data being used now? Of course, the most common one is to capture existing. Think about existing piping or existing buildings. Traditionally, you'd have to go out and measure that. Now you can actually scan and get that data. It's being used in BIM so that, again, when you're constructing a building, you can actually get the real data. Historical design, again, that's more of not an efficiency, but I think of things like the water tower in Chicago, where we can scan that and keep that forever in our archives. Another big one you probably will learn about is the designing in context of reality. And what that means is, let's say your existing building you're working on, a lot of times you start with a blank screen, right? And then you're taking notes of measurements. Now the software gives you the capability to actually pull in that scan data so you can work in the virtual world. You can use it to validate construction. You can use it for bidding, for prefab, which is another big one. And then, as I mentioned, for facility management. And this is just an example. We're an Autodesk reseller, so it's a little self-serving, but there's a ton of software out there. But again, if you go back 3 or 4 years ago, the hardware couldn't handle scan data or point cloud data. But now you can easily import it into software like Revit. So again, designing buildings. Navisworks for clash detections. Inventor, factory design. We're going in and we're scanning factories, right, and doing layouts. 3ds Max for visualization and InfraWorks takes the drone scan data and you can actually create visuals from it. So again, not only is the hardware progressed, but the software is. So that's hopefully something you're all learning about. And this just gives you an example. Think about the complexity of working with piping and structures. Now we can get that. We use an example of Exelon, is the power company in Chicago. And it's very difficult to run through nuclear nuclear emergency, they have to shut things down. So now what they're doing, they're starting to scan their facilities, and now they can virtually walk through that. So when they have an emergency, they're even more prepared. But this is the kind of thing that is impacting workflow and improving things. So the other thing that I talk about is additive manufacturing, and quite honestly, in the 3D print, in the building world, this hasn't had much of an impact. It's mostly been around traditional manufacturing. But 3D printing or additive manufacturing is just the ability to add material versus traditionally manufacturing use subtractive, start with a block. So that just kind of defines it. But the one thing I say about 3D printing is there's a lot of hype to it. You guys are too young. You probably anyone know Saved by the Bell? This is actually scary. Maybe some of the older. But anyways, so Zach Morris. Think in 1984 there's 12,000 cell phone users. In 2015 there's 262 million in the U.S. And Apple alone in one quarter did $19 billion in iPhone sales. To give you a reference of where 3D printing was, it was founded about 2 years after cell phone, and it's only now a $2 billion industry. So you think there's a little upside or maybe a little overhype? I think we're at the bottom of the hype cycle, and now reality is setting in, and it's going to be a slower crawl. But I just always like to kind of set the stage that it is a little overhyped. But again, in the building world, we are seeing it being used versus traditional modeling. And the advantage is it is faster, right? You don't have to go and laser cut things. The other most important thing is it's linked to the actual data. Meaning today, if you build models or mock-ups, that model builder has to self-interpret that model. In this case, we're using the data and it's coming out exactly how it is intended. And again, we have the ability to print color. This is just some other examples. You see early mass modeling. You see it for design reviews. And there is something about it, virtualization or visualization really has become important, and whether it be Oculus or that. But there is still something about holding a model and communicating that way. And here's some examples that we did. We did a water treatment plant. You can see we actually did a machine there on the left-hand side. And again, just kind of gives you the idea of where 3D printing was working. And so it's interesting, I heard Matt talking about Wrigley Field. So just to give you an idea where it's being used is we actually scanned Wrigley Field for part of that project and actually 3D printed some of the posts that they have to do. Again, just to overall make sure that it goes along smoothly and they think through everything. So it's kind of cool how it's being used. And then my last thing, I'd just like to talk about the future where I think it's going to impact the building industry is HP is coming out with technology. And why this is amazing is it's going to be faster than anything out there today, and it's going to be strong. So you'll see when this is done, it's actually able to pick up a car. So this is phenomenal in the 3D print world. So now I see the day where we can print things out in the job site that might help us assemble as opposed to going back and prefabbing it. So this will be introduced the end of next year, but it's going to be totally revolutionary. It's going to bring printing speeds at speeds that haven't been out there, cost at the lowest cost, and again, just overall speed. So keep your eye on HP because of what they're doing. And the other one, a lot of us have talked about the future is, have anyone seen this, but like that little printer I have there basically extrudes plastic. Well, now they've designed some machines that will extrude cement, right? And what it's able to do then is print the outside structures very quick. In fact, you can Google it. In China, in a matter of 24 hours, they printed 8 structures using this type of system. So again, this is where I think it's going to go and impact more of the building because we'll be able to do things such as this printing in areas that we could have never have done so quickly before. So with that, I think I'm done with mine. But again, feel free. I'm very passionate about education. I give you guys a lot of credit for coming here at such a young age. So if you need any information, grab my card or you can grab my information. And if you ever need help or assistance, feel free to reach out to me because we are all about improving the industry and improving your minds at such a young age. So with that, thank you.